Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Five Property Saturday Show. Now, we've got a brilliant topic this morning, which is increase your yield, better business tips for local landlords and investors. So I've got guests today, which is Jim Parker.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
Morning, Jim. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah.
This will be a good topic for us to cover. You've got a lot of experience in this field, so that'll be good. And we've also got Charlotte Caird this morning, which is a property manager.
Morning, guys.
Morning, Charlotte. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
So yeah, as I was just saying to Jim, we've got a brilliant topic to cover this morning. Increase your yield. This is going to have a lot of good tips for landlords and investors in the local area. So I'll kick off and I'll just run through, obviously, is your rental property working as hard as it could for you? As a landlord, you'll want to ensure that your investment is performing well and continues to make good business sense throughout the time you own it. How often, homes often have hidden potential that, as well as unlocking more income, can substantially increase demand. And you'll discover there are many more options than merely increasing the rent and hoping it all works out. So Jim, I'm going to come to you because obviously you are an experienced landlord and an investor, should I say, really. Obviously, hidden potential in properties. What's your take on that?
God, there's huge amounts of areas that you can just focus on. I mean, the reality is, when you think about the logic of this, it's the improvements, the little improvements you make all the way throughout the actual tenancy itself and through the property itself. It will leverage your income fully at the end. And I mean, we talk about this every time in our business as well. You know, the 1% improvement every single day over 365 days of the year is a 365% improvement overall. And it's exactly the same when it comes to having a property and having a rental investment and income. It's like, it's all these wee marginal gains that you can make all throughout the process. It makes a fundamental overall difference at the end, which leverages your income. Now, it may seem like not a lot, but the reality is, if you've got about 20 of them, that's a lot. Because even if you make, well, for example, if you make another £100, a month, there's another 1,200. It's straight on the bottom line. You make another 200 a month, there's another 2,400 straight on the bottom line.
Yeah, all these small tweaks and improvements and things. And like you say, if you've got a bigger portfolio, if you're doing that across the board, then that adds up in the long run. Do you have any take on that, Charlotte?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like Jim said, it's the little minor details that you need to focus on. Like if there's marks on the walls, it'll take you 5 minutes to just get them covered. Little things like that.
Morning, Anne-Marie.
And it can definitely increase the rental value, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of improvements you can make, and we cover it as we go through. So let's kick off with reducing your outgoings. Now, even when you have tenants, you still have outgoings of some sort, whether it's a mortgage, insurance, ground rents, or service charges. Finding opportunities to reduce them is an excellent way to bolster the foundations of your investment. Now, looking at insurance policies you have, from buildings to contents to rent protection, rather than wait until their renewal date, do an interim check to see if you can make savings. Often there is the mere mention of switching to a different company can produce a discount from your existing provider. Now, recommend that quite a lot, and Jim, you'll agree on that. Yeah, I mean, always look at your insurance policies and look to renew. And like you say, if you put pressure on your existing provider, they will probably give you a better deal.
It's tolerances as well. It's like, how tolerant are you? I mean, for me, my insurer, I've got £1,000 excess. The reality is I'm only planning for the house burns down. That's the reality, because £1,000 excess over, if then I go right down to a £250 excess and over the number of properties I've got, it makes it completely prohibitive, and the risk I would take for, for example, a front door, a front door to replace is probably about £800 if it's a good quality door and above. But when you think about the logic, if you kept replacing, if anything happened to your front door all the time, and then you kept replacing 2 or 3 of these a year, the income, the differential between actually your insurance going up to get the 250 excess and you claiming all the time as well is prohibitive. So it's actually having that balancing act and understanding that and understanding the amount that you could save just because you get your insurance right. It's also making sure you're properly covered. The classic in the past is we've had where that landlord wasn't covered and insisted at the time when I said to him, oh no, I'm covered for all that type of tenant.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's fine. And as soon as a £25,000 claim in, the boiler loss adjuster came round and said to me, so what's the position of the tenant? Oh, well, they're that position. And they went, oh, he's not covered for that.
And
I'm like, oh my God, 25 grand.
I do remember that
because
case.
Because he thought he had the right insurance, and he never checked, and I insisted that he check. And he went, no, I trust him. I will be covered for that type of tenancy. So these are classic examples about where you can reduce your outgoings and minimise your liability and your risk as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I remember the case you're talking about there. And I always, when I'm speaking to landlords and investors, please check your insurance policies and what you're actually covered for, and the terms and conditions in that. It's very important.
Shopping around for insurance is key as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
really,
definitely. And it goes on to say, if you're paying monthly, or you probably only need to cancel your payments. If you've paid full, many policies will offer you a pro rata refund, but there may be an administration charge. So weigh up the cost of cancelling before you hit the button to switch. So also at mortgages are usually the most significant monthly outgoing, which makes staying on top of your rates your biggest saving opportunity. Again, take into account any early repayment and application charges. But if you're on a regular variable rate, then it's probably a better deal out there for you. Other referencing options include remortgaging your primary home at a cheaper residential rate to pay off the more expensive buy-to-let loan, or you could increase your buy-to-let mortgage payments now to take years off the repayment period, reducing your overall interest costs and freeing up more of your monthly profit much sooner. Now, mortgages and buy-to-let mortgages is your thing, Jim.
That comes down to a tolerance thing as well. I'm an interest-only landlord.
Yes.
There's no way I'm doing capital repayment. There's no way I'm going to pay off a loan which is at 3%, for example. I'm mortgaging for the bank, and I'm making a 14% net return on passive income. I'm making a differential every single time, 11% on the bank's money. So it's, I joke about it and call it opium, other people's money. That's the so we're on the opium, but not literally, by the way. But other people's money. But that's the reality. It's like you can leverage your income with the bank, and so I'm never a big fan of doing capital repayment. A lot of people say about what happens when you get to the end of the term. Well, just remortgage it. Just go on another mortgage. It doesn't matter, and switch during the time and everything like that. But I talked to a couple of investors during the week because I'd done one-to-ones with them, and we talked about how long it's going to take and when we worked out what their repayment was on if they cashed in their mortgage now and got into another mortgage, it was minimal in comparison to what they could save overall, because they were going on a 5-year fixed rate deal, and then what they were on the now, and then what it could have been by the time they'd finished. And then we worked that out, and we thought it makes sense actually to have a 5-year fixed rate deal and just move now and take the hit for that rate. I mean, I've sat and sit and do this all the time. It's a numbers thing for me. We call it the opportunity cost in management accounting anyway. That's what we call it. It's the cost of not actually doing something, the opportunity lost in doing that. So it's a typical management accounting thing in industry, which I learned from before, from my career in industry as a management accountant. So there's huge savings to be made if you can just see it. But the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. But that's why most people come to me, because I'm completely immersed in it, and I have been for about 30 years now, and I do know most things, touch wood, but I'm continually learning all the time. I mean, some of the new guys on the block that have come on, and the things I'm learning from them, and I'm thinking, wow. But it never existed at that time, and I wasn't able to do it. But it's just new ways and new techniques. But I don't mean in terms of what they call strategies and all the rest of it, and BBR and BDUD, and it's like, just get rid of the jargon, folk, and just tell me straight what it is, how to do it. Didn't give me the jargon bit. Just get to the point. There's my rant for the day.
I think when it comes to mortgages and buy-to-let mortgages, I think it's always important to have a good mortgage broker and things on hand and have that contact. Charlotte, you got any take on the mortgage side of things?
Yeah, I was going to say, just make sure that you get advice from a mortgage advisor before jumping into anything that you might later maybe regret because you've not taken the correct advice.
I mean, obviously,
can I qualify that, please? And you're absolutely right in terms of and I'm always wary about this. Get advice from a mortgage advisor. Absolutely right. It's all about the right rates and what you can get.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to financial numbers crunching about the opportunity lost, the opportunity cost,
yes,
mortgage advisors really can't advise on that, because that's a financial thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're restricted by their guidance they're given by the government and by legislation in terms of how they do it. So it needs a person with a business acumen and a business background to understand that mentality.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people, like you say, come to yourself, Jim, and I appreciate obviously your opinion and expertise. Obviously, you've done it for a lot of years, and yeah, so I think you need to have somebody like that, like yourself, as a point of contact as well, who's been through it, experienced it, and could give you that advice, other than just what the best rates are.
Well, you know yourself, most people that get in touch with us, they're then sent to me for an initial consultation, about how to do it and what goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, mortgages and is an interesting topic, but we'll move on. Adding more bedrooms to a property. Now, if you're looking to hold a property for a longer term, it's worth looking at whether you can optimize the income generating potential of the floor area. More bedrooms generally mean more rent. So if you have a loft, you might be able to get 1 or 2 extra bedrooms up there, along with a second bathroom or shower room. Loft conversions are often the easiest way to increase accommodation without complicated planning consent or compromising how the existing accommodation works. So, Jim, I think you've done this in the past, and I think, Charlotte, you've had a recent experience with. Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. Do you want to cover that just now?
Yeah, so I did a viewing with a gentleman who was an investor, and it was a 2-bed property, 1 bathroom. And he was wanting to change the bathroom into a 3rd bedroom, and then add an ensuite onto the master. But because of the layout of the property and it was a flat roof, you couldn't extend up the way into the loft. But for the layout of the house, it just wouldn't have ever worked.
Yeah, I mean,
and to add, $5,000 on to
I mean, I think
value.
It's always good to try and look at obviously conversions that way. Like you say, there wasn't a loft in this one; it was a flat roof. But it's maybe not always the best idea. I mean, he was going to get rid of the family bathroom to try and put an extra bedroom, and he was going to add a small shower room, which then really wouldn't facilitate a family. So it didn't really make sense. Although he was trying to increase his rent and ultimately his yields, he was probably going to make the property less appealing. So you need to always think it like that as well. But I mean, loft, like I say, the loft conversions are probably the most popular one. Jim, you done loft conversions in your time?
No, really, I'm not a big fan. Loft conversions just sound costly to me. In easy ways. I mean, I remember going into one of my properties years ago before I bought it, and I walked into the front room, and I was like, wait a minute, I could have a pub in here. I could have a disco. The sheer size of it. It was just like from the front of the property to the back of the property, and it was massive.
Yeah.
And my first thought was itself, when you look at the ex-local authority flats, it's like you've always got a bedroom off the living room. And I thought, well, I could just put a subdivide and put a doorway and have a double bedroom off the living room. Yeah. But then I brought it in a bit so I could have a cupboard up the side. So, I had a subdivide. I had the bedroom, you go into the double bedroom, and then I have a cupboard which you can actually store, and for a heating system as well, to sit in a new energy efficient heating system. And then even in that bedroom itself, it had under the stairs, because the stairs ran up the side from the hall, it had under the stairs a cupboard for the storage in the bedroom. So actually, I took that and I turned a 2-bedroom into a 3-bedroom straight away. And it was only for a matter of maybe about £1,000 to do that.
Yeah.
And immediately you're adding on probably about 80 quid, 100 quid a month in terms of your rent level. So just that initial £1,000 investment actually reaps me £1,000 almost every single year on my top line.
Yeah, and that's a good example, obviously, using the existing floor space to obviously create more accommodation. I think
the key here is, Richard, though, and a lot of people think, oh, it's about cramming everybody into one property. It's no, it's not like that at all. It's about just making good use of the current floor space you've got already. It's not about getting everybody in wee tiny rooms and like on bunk beds and everything like that. That's not what we're talking about at all. It's just making use of the original space that you've got.
Yeah, I think it's important to always keep in mind that if you are changing the accommodation on the existing floor space, is that it needs to still be usable for your target tenant. Like obviously, if you're targeting young families and things, like you say, Jim, you're not wanting small rooms with bunk beds and things, and the accommodation size is too cramped. I mean, that's definitely something that you need to be aware of. So obviously, keeping within the existing floor plan, you can reconfigure the layout. If the kitchen and the living room are close to each other but separate, you could combine these into a contemporary open plan living space while freeing up the kitchen's old location to create an extra bedroom. Perhaps you can even install a breakfast bar to zone the kitchen and living areas while providing a social connection and a place to eat. Also, to make the redesigned living space feel bigger, blend the kitchen into the background using the same colour of the cupboards as the walls. Remember that the room needs to be large enough to cope with the extra people living in the property. You won't get the best return on your investment if it feels like you're profiteering or a compromise. And that's exactly what we were just discussing there. And I think that's really important. And it's like that. That's the prime example, Charlotte, that you were up against last week, or was it this week? Can't remember. But
can't remember.
Probably classic examples as well. When you walk into some houses and there's like 2 public and 1 bedroom.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, for the price of actually just taking a fireplace out of a bedroom or disconnecting it, it could actually be another bedroom.
Yeah.
So it just makes it more usable. And the initial public bedroom, the initial public room, which is actually probably the lounge itself, or the living room, depending on what status you're at, lounge or living room. I did get told one time for somebody that said, a lounge is something you've got in an airport, Sonny. I went, oh dear, I maybe said the wrong thing. Always remember that. So you have to pitch your language to the right audience, if it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. So you could actually utilise it like that. I mean, I've got a classic one at West 4th Street now in Cellardyke.
Yeah.
It has actually 2 public rooms and 1 bedroom. But I actually went round it and did the tour last week, the pre-portal launch.
Yeah.
And it's clearly obvious that all you need to do is get rid of the fireplace, and you've got a beautiful bedroom with dual aspect windows. It actually overlooks right in between the houses towards the harbour.
Yeah.
So you're literally just round the corner. So this 1 bedroom can now be a 2-bedroom apartment. And there is potential possibly to move upstairs if you really want and do something with the attic. But if all else fails, it's a decent attic room with a Velux in it. And it's got a great back garden as well. So, what more do you want in the East Nuke and Cellardyke, a stone's throw away from the harbour? That's my pitch for this property, by the way. If anybody's interested, go on to the East Nuke 5 Properties Facebook page and watch my pre-launch.
But yeah, I could think, Jim. I think one of yours is I could think of one of your properties that's got 2 reception rooms, and one of them is utilised as a bedroom, and it makes an amazing master bedroom in there, and obviously gives you that extra bedroom as well. So that's definitely something to consider if there's 2 reception rooms. And
is that 163 by any chance?
Is there no 144?
It could be, yeah. Listen, I lived in 160 previously, and that's a huge property.
That is that one.
Like, and then the bathroom as well. It's like a 4-piece bathroom. It's like
it is a 4-piece. It's amazing. That's a really big property. And you've obviously, like you say, you've had that for a long time, and you get a good return on that.
Oh, I've had that since 1997. That property, and I love it. I would happily move back there tomorrow.
97, I was still at school.
I'm not sure anybody else would want to move back there.
So that's the one I was thinking of, Jim. So that's a really good example. So, so make it easy to live. The longevity of tenancies and reduced void periods are crucial factors in the yield that you achieve. Very often it comes down to how easy it is to live somewhere. So look around for any potential areas of difficulty or dissatisfaction. Seemingly trivial issues like having a place to put the vacuum cleaner, the ironing board, suitcases and other household items that don't belong on display can go a long way to keeping your tenants for longer. Now, I think keeping tenants and tenancies longer is a very important thing. And I think there's a lot of things that you could do in the first instances to make tenants feel at home, ultimately, and feel comfortable, and building up good communication with a tenant and a good rapport for the ongoing throughout the tenancy, as all these factors kind of contribute to having longer tenancies and ultimately avoiding void periods or extended void periods quite intermittently. I mean, that's a big bugbear. Some landlords is, I keep getting new tenants every 6 months. There's a way to manage that and keep tenants for longer and happier. Would you agree with that, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. There's nothing you could disagree with that.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Charlotte, what's your take on that? Obviously, you deal with tenants quite a lot.
I mean, it is like I said before. It's the little things, like if your property comes with like fitted blinds and they're not working properly, for the cost of putting up a new blind to keep a tenant happy, it's worth it, because it's not affecting your life as a landlord, but it's subsequently affecting the tenant's life slightly, because waking them up in the morning, stuff like that. They become miserable. So for us, it's the little things.
Yeah, definitely all the small things that could go a long way to making a tenancy.
It's the wee niggly bits that get to some people. The fact is, I mean, let's be honest, they're paying for a property to rent that should be in habitable and good order and full repairing standard and energy efficient as well. So they're paying for that. So if they're paying for that, why should they not be getting that? So if you're supplying originally, some of the items like furnishings and stuff like that, then you should make sure the furnishings are up to scratch, and you should be prepared to replace them every now and again under the normal wear and tear procedures. That's really what it comes down to. And that's how and probably why you'll keep a tenant for quite a long time. So it's establishing that relationship and making sure you've got that with your tenant and you're quite happy. And this is why I talk about all the time about making sure you maximize the rent you're charging. It's not so you can put more money in your pocket. It's so you've got money to actually do things for the tenant when anything goes wrong. Because the last thing you want to do is say, when anything happens is you turn around to your tenant and say, I'm sorry, I've not got any money. It's like, it's all going to the bank for the mortgage. It's like, well, that's no good to anybody. You need to look after somebody. You've got an obligation. You're a landlord.
You do. And as a landlord and things, you've got a duty of care to obviously make sure that the property's wind and watertight. And like you say, if you're providing white goods and furnishings and things, they need to be fit for purpose and functional. And like you say, obviously, the EPC or energy performance rating, and that's a big thing nowadays. And you'd be amazed the amount of tenants that actually ask what's the EPC rating on a property, because they want to know that it's energy efficient, that it's going to be easy to heat, and not going to be costly to heat as well. And these are all things that you need to keep in mind, and can obviously jeopardise a tenancy if they're not really at the level they should be.
It's probably one of the reasons why we do quarterly inspections as well. To make sure that everything's okay, because it depends on people's degrees of what they think is the right standard. Because our standards, my standards are way up here, and other people's standards are completely different for that. So I like to give people a good service. I like to give people a good product, because essentially that's what I'm doing. We're in the people business. Ultimately, I mean, fair enough, it's houses we rent in terms of what we're doing, but we're still in the people business. It's a relationship we build with a tenant over a period of time, and to make it so that if anything does go wrong, they feel comfortable to pick up the phone and they don't feel we're going to blame them and play the blame game and say, well, it's all your fault. And it's like, why did you let that happen? It's well, thank you very much for contacting us so quick so we can actually do something about it. That's really what that's about. So it's making it really easy for someone to do all these things in order to get the right tenants, to maximize occupancy rates as well. That's another thing it comes down to. So it all feeds in terms of how we're doing things in order to increase these margins, in order to get better returns in terms of what we're doing, to make sure we ultimately do it. And if you provide the service better than everybody else, then guess what? You're going to be the probably the best off as a result of that.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think a big thing there is obviously property inspections. And without property inspections, it's left to the tenant to report things to you solely. And sometimes that, like you say, if you've not got good lines of communication with your tenant, that doesn't happen. And then things could go unnoticed, and things could progress into quite a costly repair, which is something that was simple in the first beginning. I'm Charlotte,
we get loads of messages in the middle of the night, don't we? Loads of messages in the middle of the night through Messenger, through Facebook, through various different avenues, even phone calls to, I pick up the phone calls for some of the offices, so I'll get phone calls in the middle of the night with people, saying that, and it says, oh, you've phoned the sales line, but that's okay. I've got your name and number. I'll pass it on to the right team. So we pass it on and it gets resolved. But I don't think any other letting agent really does that sort of degree of service that I know of. But it's all about standards. It's all about just being world class, eh? If you want to be the best, you've got to act like the best, and you've got to do what the best would do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we spent a lot of years building up our level of service, and our out hours emergency side to things, I think is paramount to others at the moment. But that's my personal opinion, although I think it's tried and tested, and it's been.
If anybody wants to challenge us, give us a go then.
Monday night, I think it was. There was a family that had no heating, and the back at 9 o'clock, I was away to one of the offices picking up heaters and taking them out to.
And there's very, if any, there's very few agents that I would see doing that at 9 o'clock at night, taking out heaters.
But then to a degree, we're not really blowing their own trumpet, if this makes sense. This is actually just explaining. This is one of the procedures that we do to make people, comfortable in their environment and to stay with us for a long time, because they realise that we're always going to look after them. We're always, I've had people in the past that have actually sold houses for. They've moved into one of my tenancies, and I've been expecting them. Well, you'll probably, this is at Durringston Drive actually when I had that one.
Yeah, I remember.
I sold her one round the corner in Kirkcaldy from Durringston Drive. She moved into Durringston Drive and says, "Oh, it's only for 6 months." I went, "Oh, that's fine, no bother, I'm fine." Looked after her and the rest of it, and like 3 years later, she was still there. and she said, she kept phoning me up and she said one day, I says, "How come you're still here? Because you should have moved by now." She says, "I'll be honest," she says, "I turned around to all my friends and they say to me, 'Why are you still renting? This is money thrown away.'" And she says, "To be honest, I would pay the same amount of money on the mortgage at that point in time because interest rates were high. But the thing is, I don't need to pay for any repairs at all. I just left the phone and Jim's got somebody around within 24 hours to fix it like that." Says, "I can't get that myself with anybody." So, and that's why she stayed with me for 3 years. She was absolutely fantastic. And I have that as well. We have Amy. Amy, I sold her house in Hogarth, I sold her house in St Andrews, and then she's living with somebody in one of my tenancies somewhere else. And Amy's wonderful. Amy's a wonderful person. And Amy was talking about when the river was getting a bit higher and all the rest of it. She was going, "I'm getting a bit worried about that." And I says, "Don't worry about that, Amy. There's flood prevention measures over the other side. I've checked it all out. I've made sure you're higher than everybody else with this property. So you'll never need to worry because everybody else will get flooded first." And sure enough, everybody else did get flooded first. But we were fine because I had made sure that was all in place to make sure that didn't ever happen. And just that fact that I was responding back to her on a Saturday and a Sunday and in the middle of the night and stuff like that immediately by email, it just gave her such a
reassurance and reassurance as well that she's got that direct line of contact, and then obviously and got fast response times, which you didn't even get with even the council. I mean, sometimes council repairs could take a hell of a long time.
Let's not go on about the council.
I'll know
about that.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I know. We'll not go down that route.
I am actually quite. I like to know all these things. So when people do move to us, or they move to one of my properties from a council house, and I'm like, why would you want to move from a council house? Because that's a secure tenancy, and it's obviously a far better rent. And I am actually like at pains to say, no, you should stay where you are. It's better off for you money wise. And they're like, no, I want to move to one of your properties. And I'm like, that makes no sense at all. And then when I go behind it, and then I go, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm in the neighbourhood. Can I just drop in and I'll just have a wee look around your property? And I'm like, wow, appalled. It's like riddled with damp. And I'm like, that is unbelievable. And I know sometimes tenants can do that themselves, but with non-ventilation. Yeah. These issues sometimes aren't non-ventilation. I'm thinking, how many times have you reported this? And it's like, forget it. Just come and stay with one of my houses and I'll look after you. That's my experience of something, but we're not all perfect. You've got to understand that. So, as it's the classic example, as one finger, as you point the finger at someone else, there's 10 pointing back. Yeah. but we're not perfect.
No, but I think as well, like you're saying about like the little repairs and that, the quick turnaround we get because of like our contractor list that we built up as well plays a massive part in that as well.
Yeah, having reliable contractors and people that will go out quickly and fix things quickly and are there like night and day basically. And we have a lot of contractors.
But again, this is all part of the wee things I'm talking about. This is the 1% improvements.
Yeah.
This is the additional things that actually go a long way. Because when you think about the ramifications of it, people think about response times as like, how does that increase my margin? How does that get me more money? It keeps a tenant with you longer. And then when you say to them, look, we're going to have to review the rent. I've never reviewed the rent, actually. I only review the rent when somebody moves out and somebody moves in, that's it. But I never sit in between a tenancy and say, by the way, your rent's going up. And yet everybody else, including the government, seems to do that every single year just by recourse. But it's something I've never ever done. It's like, well, that's your rent. If you stay with me for like 10 years, whatever it is, you know, fine, that'll probably be your rent for 10 years. It doesn't make any difference because I'm quite happy, I'm quite comfortable. I know what my costs are to run it. I know what the finance costs are to run it. So I'm quite comfortable them having their rent fixed for 10 years. If the numbers work out for me. I'm a long-term tenant, looks after the property, everybody's happy. A win-win situation. That's what you want.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If the numbers work at that level, why risk upsetting your tenant and risk them maybe thinking, well, I'm going to move on now because obviously my rent's getting hiked up.
It just gets everybody in. It just gets everybody uneasy. It's like, is this guy going to increase the rent every single year? And it's like almost like, oh, here we come. We're going to get increased. And it's like, I didn't buy into that. It's like that's like the insurance companies and AA and RAC and everything. All automatically, we're just going to increase it. Virgin Media. It's like we'll just put 50 pence on your bill, but what you're getting is 50 pence right across the board of 10 million people. So that's X amount right on their bottom line just for 50 pence. But that's again, that's me on my high horse again.
Yeah, you need to be careful with rent increases because it could cause unsettlement with the tenant and ultimately shorten your tenancies. If it's not necessary, then obviously be careful when you're reviewing that.
It's a discussion. It's
Yeah.
It's definitely a discussion. It's like, well, I tell you what, I'm going to put a new kitchen in. I'm going to put new windows in. I'm going to put, a new heating system in. You know the one I'm talking about, Charlotte.
Yeah.
And it's like, sorry, you're still paying me the same amount of rent, and I've just outlaid 16 grand.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you say, it's a discussion, and I think it needs to be mutually agreed between either agent, landlord, tenant, and everybody's happy. I think that's the most important thing. Anyway,
happy tenants, happy landlords.
Yes,
happy everybody. And that's when I come back to the classic example is some landlords or investors go, oh well, it's going really well. I think I'll just take that back and manage it myself. And I think the only reason it's going well is because we're doing it right.
Yeah, I've had that in the past a few times.
So the last thing you should be doing is because that's a really good tenant. It's like, no. It's because we're doing all the things right. And when you take it back, you're not going to be doing what we're doing. You're not even going to be doing the service level that we're doing. You're not going to be having a tenant in the middle of the night phoning you and actually being able to deal with it. You're not going to have somebody messaging in the middle of the night and actually be able to deal with it either. It's like, again, I come back to saying these are all the wee things that you'll do to keep that person and to look after them as a result about and get everybody happy in the whole consequence.
Yeah, I think coming back to that as well, obviously we've had that in the past, and things are going so well that landlords come and say, oh, I'm just going to take it back and look after it myself. But I didn't think they actually realise everything that goes in on a daily basis and the whole process. I mean, we done training fairly recently, and we were asked to write down everything that we do from start to finish, just for the actual process of putting a property in the market to find the right tenant. And God, we had a list of over 100 things. And that wasn't even involved in the management once the tenant was in. This was just putting the tenant in and finding that whole process. It was amazing. And there's so much involved in all these processes. And obviously, I think it takes a long time to master that as an agent and a managing agent as well.
That's why you really want to be an investor.
Investing,
because you really want to have a hands-off experience. Because unless you're prepared to learn all this and go through all this and actually become a fully qualified, and I mean qualified because you have to be qualified as a letting agent. I'm qualified as a letting agent. Richard, so are you. So we're qualified letting agents by the government, approved by Letwell actually, which is one of the most high standard for Letwell in terms of where they are. And as a result of that, that's when you're experienced enough to actually be able to look after people and make sure, and then also be able to advise other people like yourself, Charlotte, on what you should be doing in certain areas and certain things. And that's when you think to yourself as a landlord, do you really want to do all that? Or should you just go and do what you really like and actually just do an investment and get somebody else to look after it? That's a classic example, eh?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an ever ongoing learning curve. I think
hours and hours. I mean, this morning there's obviously the government's dropped a bombshell that they're going through a review process and they're possibly going to cap rents right across, and they're looking to legislate against it. And I'm thinking, you're That's crazy. The answer to this is build more social council housing.
Yeah,
That's how you get rid of pressure on prices and stop rents going up. You actually build more council housing and shared equity housing as well. And as a result, you flood the market with more homes. Therefore, there's the demand's taking out the market. Therefore, prices of houses stabilise in pressured status areas. There is a few in North East Fife, and I won't name them because it gets quite emotive. But prices stabilise in these areas, plus the rents stabilise in these areas as well, because you're taking all that demand out of the market. And that's fine. But that's the answer to everything. Plus the fact you're creating loads of jobs and you're training loads of people. It's a win-win for everybody just by building infrastructure and houses. It's why the government's not investing in this.
We reiterate that on a weekly basis on the show, Jim, about the social housing. It's so important.
Banging that drum for.
Well, I think it needs to be. It definitely needs to be kept drilled in because it's so important. But anyway, so just to continue on making it easy to live. So with no way to hide things away, a home can feel temporary, as though someone isn't planning to stay there for long, and that could well come true if your tenant never feels quite settled. Even a cabinet in the bathroom, mirrored front above the basin, if you're stuck for space, you can avoid the overcrowded mess of bottles, pots, toiletries, bags, gathered dust and looks unsightly. Very simple. Think about how people really live and what they really need. I think that's really important, and we've covered a lot of that there with making it easy for tenants to live in properties. So and then we move on to present like a pro. Now,
what does that mean then? Present like a pro? You're obviously going to tell us, aren't you?
I'm going to tell you, yeah, obviously.
I'm eager to find out.
Rental homes can be a disadvantage if they are empty. When photographed and viewed, every last detail comes into sharp relief when there's no furniture, textiles, gadgets, or accessories to create a sense of home. And I think that's important as well. I mean, if you're taking people to view properties, they want to walk in and feel like the property can be their home. And I think that's really important. They need to walk in and envisage themselves being able to live there. And I mean, I do viewings, and you know when people are serious, when we could put this here and we could put, they're planning where their furniture is going to go. That's when you know somebody's got the feeling like, I could live here, this could be my home. So it's vital that everything looks great. If the walls and woodwork are looking tired, attend to scuffs, chips and picture marks. If they won't clean off, a fresh coat of paint can be the real lift to excite potential tenants with the prospect of moving into a freshly decorated home. Charlotte, you were touching on that earlier about obviously making sure just all these wee things are dealt with and the place is looking nice. I mean, obviously you deal quite a lot with the turnaround of properties and having them ready in that state for new tenants. So
well, that's it. I mean, one in particular this weekend, I've got one of our landlords, tenant vacated, and the property was immaculate, but there's a couple of scuffs on the wall, and he was like, is there anything I can do? And I was like, cover the scuffs and it's ready to go. And
yeah,
so we've got somebody
it's simple, yeah, just the wee touch-ups that would make the place so much different. And tenants and potential tenants, when they're viewing, do pick up on these small things. I mean, Charlotte, you were even out changing a toilet seat the other day. just before the tenant moved in, so that
the day of the tenant moved in,
so that everything was right for them coming in, because we didn't want a tenant moving in with a broken toilet seat, or do you know what I mean? I mean, and these are all the wee things that just make the difference.
I hope you did a risk assessment in case I slip off that toilet seat. Tested it out, sat on it, and moved about a bit.
Well, give it a wiggle. The wiggle.
But it's true. I mean, you know, the thing that things me the most when you talk about get rid of scuffs and marks and everything like that. I kind of think there's some. I'll be honest and say there's some landlords, and I mean landlords because they obviously want a bit of hands-on and do stuff themselves. Whereas an investor, clearly, again, we'll explain an investor just like you just do all. I'm not interested. I like to be an investor, and you know that, but I do get involved sometimes. So the landlords sometimes go out and they just They just paint with scuffs.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And you walk in, you just see these big bright bits of paint, and then you see the other shade of the paint, and you think, oh no, that's not what I was talking about. Because then you should really just paint the whole wall. But then if you paint the whole wall, you've got to think to yourself, you've got to paint the whole wall, then you probably need to paint all the woodwork as well. Possibly because the woodwork might be that dated, if that makes sense, just with the change in the colour over a period of time. It gets a wee bit off-whites. Whites get off-white, and other colours get darker or lighter or whatever it is as they go. And then you've had picture frames up as well, where somebody's had before. And they've been in for a long time, to be honest. Again, I come back saying you should be prepared to paint it. But some tenants, and I've done it in the past, will actually want to move into the property. They'll look at it and say, you know, can I just paint myself? And I go, aye, fine. So what are you thinking about painting? Okay, well, you could paint that. I tell you what I'll do. I'll buy the paint for you. You know, that's what I've done in the past. It's like, I'll buy the paint for you if you want, if you're happy to paint it, or you buy the paint and I'll get the decorator to do it. You know, whatever they want. And again, it's just another way of making people feel at home and making people feel that it's something they want to take pride in because they've done it themselves.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to stay longer as a result of that because they've now turned a house into a home.
Yeah. And that, I think
that's powerful.
Yeah, that definitely is the key. We've done viewings with potential tenants of properties that are in the midst of maybe refurb or redecoration, and allowed them to choose the colour of the carpets, choose the paint, and even supplied the paint and things as well. And like you say, it gives them a sense of they've obviously put their stamp on it, and they're creating their own space as well. And I think that's really important.
You've got to be mindful though when you think about it. We do check it. These people know what they're doing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because I have left only through personal experience years and years ago of doing it myself and having to work as a financial controller and director in industry. I've never had the time to keep an eye on everything perfectly. And I've said, oh, just decorate it yourself. And then when you come back, it's like the paint's everywhere. So the carpets,
paint on the light switch, paint on the socket.
It's like, what have I done? And it's like, and you kind of think, well, it's your own fault, Jim. You said they could paint and you never checked. So you've only yourself to blame. So it's probably lessons I've learned that we've actually learned as a result of that to make sure that they have some degree of competence or they've got the right person actually doing that job for them.
But that's when your managing person comes in and be like, right, okay, they have painted it, but it's not a good job on your quarterly inspections. It's all that can be checked up on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you'll have to rectify that, or possibly there might end up being a deduction at the end against your deposit, or you'll have to put it back to that. You know, we talked about it yesterday, Charlotte, but you said so-and-so's wanting to paint pink and they want to paint bright blue. And it's like, well, to be honest, if my houses are quite neutral when people move in, so it's a blank canvas for them to do what they want, but they're nice and fresh as a result. So that's why people want to move in straight away. But the key here is, it's like, you know, not everybody's going to want a bright pink room. So if it comes, obviously you've told them this. We clearly say, and my policy is, as long as it's rectified back to what it was in the beginning, when you move on, I'm fine with that. You can do it.
9 times out of 10 do as well. 9 times out of 10 people do put it back. You know, there's occasional ones that are like, oh, but it's nice, we'll just leave it.
Yeah. I mean, it's your home as a tenancy. That's really the reality. So why would I not allow you to do that? It's amazing. I've heard so many landlords and known so many landlords over the years writing clauses into the leases saying, you can't change the colour of the walls, or you can't paint. You can't change the meters into another gas supplier or electricity supplier. You can't do this, you can't do that, and you can't do this. And you can't. Hey, why do you just ask them not to move in? It's because I'll tell you what, you'll lose them within 6 months because they'll want to do something to make it their home, and they'll just feel like they're living in a sterile, controlled environment.
Yeah, and
almost like elaborate.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to feel that, especially with somebody that's supposed to be your home. I had an experience in recent years with we had an amazing tenant in a property, and they wanted to change the wallpaper in the living room, and it was some geometric wallpaper which was quite loud and not to everybody's taste. And she'd moved in, and that was there, and it was the landlord's original home who lived in it, so she had that sentimental attachment, and she would not let the tenant redecorate. And ultimately, I said, you're going to lose the tenant, and they were a brilliant tenant, and I've got them in another tenancy now, but ultimately they moved. And we had to remarket and find new tenants, and it was costly, and it just didn't make sense. And I did explain, but I mean, that's just an example, obviously, redecoration and allowing a tenant to make a property a home, basically. So, yeah, so
loose handles and wobbly taps, you know.
Yeah, I'm just going to say loose handles, wobbly taps, and ill-fitting cupboards and doors can also drag a space down. So don't leave viewers with the impression that your property is falling apart. Things can come loose over time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything needs replacing. Simple handyman tasks like these, along with grout and sealant in kitchens and bathrooms, that's an important one, are easy to fix and work wonders for first impressions. I mean, I think the sealant around baths and things is so easy to replace, and if it's not and it looks, it's old and dingy and mouldy, it could really give off the wrong impression and look really unsightly, and it could be resolved so simply.
It's the biggest top tip for a seller as well. You know, when I go around properties and I look for them to sell as well, it's the first thing I look at when I walk into a bathroom, and it's often you've got it right up the corners and inside the shower cubicles on either end, and it's just all black, or it's all, you know, bogging, for want of a better word. And I think to myself, it's the first thing I would do something about. But it's so simple, yet it sends out if you've got it sorted, it sends out a great message about how clean this place is.
Yeah.
But they don't, it's the first thing everybody sees. And then they start to then look at everything else round about the house itself, and they're going round and thinking, is there anything else like this? Because it just sends out the wrong impression.
Definitely.
And effectively, when you've got grout, grout, okay, and it's black, you could bleach the thing and it just turns white.
Yeah.
And it kills the germs, and that's it, it's done. You don't need to dig all the grout out, you just bleach it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an easy fix. So what were you going to say, Charlotte?
I can't remember now. No, sealing the bath, you need to make sure it's done properly, because it could cause a flood, pretty much.
Yeah, I've had that before. And that comes back to having the right contractors as well. I mean, we could say simply, you know, if you seal a bath, you need to fill it with water and leave it to set, and then drain it. I mean, you'd be amazed at a contractor that maybe doesn't know that. Not any other contractors, but it does happen.
I've had a few.
Yeah. But yeah, all these wee points, like you say, wobbly kitchen drawers and handles and things, they're easily fixed. I mean, if you're looking at a property and you go in and pull the kitchen drawer open and it comes off in your hand, or do you know what I mean? That's the wrong impression.
It's over a period of time as well. If you leave it wobbly on a handle or a kitchen door or anything like that, if somebody continually opens and shuts it, eventually you'll end up breaking the hinge. Yeah. And then you know, sometimes you'll get the landlord will go, it's the tenant's fault, and it's like they shouldn't. And it's like, well, to be honest, it's because it wasn't fitted properly by the person that had done it, or that it had been left for so long that, you know, the tenants know, you know, they don't know how to. Some tenants I've had don't even know how to change a light bulb.
Well, a light bulb.
Like, I have to go around and do that for them, and I have. Hence the reason why I used to carry a full toolkit in my boot and my portable ladders. I used to carry them all the time, my steps, and I just, no bother, I'll do it right now. And I'll just get out and do it right there and then, save the bother.
Yeah, and learning over the years myself, I've got light bulbs, I've got screwdrivers, I've got spare locks, I've got, everything in my car. And you need it. You need it to be an agent or a managing agent, definitely. So I think we'll go on to having a full review. If you're using a managing agent, they should be updating you at regular intervals. If you're a self-managing, here are some of the things that to review to maintain your property's performance. Occupancy. Do you have the lengthy void periods, or do your tenants regularly leave at the first year? What could be wrong? Look back over other sections of this blog that we've just discussed and see if you're missing a trick with your presentation, price, or publicity.
That's a classic straight away, the occupancy rate. I mean, if somebody's continually moving in, moving out, there's clearly something wrong.
There's something wrong.
You have to identify what's happening there and actually rectify it, or that will never change. The height of stupidity or ignorance is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't happen. So you need to change it and adapt it.
Yeah, if you're continually having a lot of turnaround on a property, and like you say, a low occupancy rate, you have to look at all these factors and think, right, is it the presentation of the property? Is it how I'm obviously the publicity? Is it the price? Do you know what I mean? You need to look at all these factors, because there has to be a reason that keeps causing that turnaround. And a low occupancy rate and a continual turnaround of tenancies could be really costly.
Well, I say it time and time again, don't I? The classic example, and Charlotte, you've heard me say this, and Richard, you've heard me say this.
Yeah.
Would you stay in that house yourself? And it's like,
that's
no. And I'm like, well, why do you tolerate it from the landlord then? Get the landlord to sort whatever it is. It's like, because I want to rent a property to someone that I would stay in myself.
Yeah.
And if I don't think I should stay in it myself because it's not nice inside, then I shouldn't be renting it to a tenant. That's my mentality. It's like, if somebody gets a property, I want it to be the standard I would want it for me.
Yeah, you want it to be well presented, clean, everything obviously done, as we've discussed in the show this morning, to make you feel like you could live in it as your own home, and that's definitely the bottom line there. The next one is rent. Are you in line with the current market? Too high and you'll have no interest, too low and your yield will drop. Rents can fluctuate, and it's not unknown for tenants to find a cheaper option and give notice before their landlord has the opportunity to strike a new deal. So it's important to preempt unnecessary changeovers and loss of income. And that comes back to obviously setting the right rent initially, and then, like we discussed earlier, Jim, rent reviews as well. Are they necessary to upset the tenant? Do you know what I mean? If you're still at a decent rent level and the numbers still work for what you're doing, then there's no reason to really upset the whole dynamic of the tenancy that you've put in place.
I mean, you didn't need to push it to the point where it's breaking point in terms of the rent level. So that, it's the tenants really upset about it, but they feel they've got nowhere else to go, and they're having to pay this all the time. I mean, that's not the type of if you're that type of landlord. I'm not really very sure you should actually be a landlord if that's the case. There is a tolerance level where you're both happy and you're both making a decent return. That's Warren Buffett talks about all the time. He doesn't look for top of the market to sell. He sells when he's comfortable at the right level and says, right, I'm happy with that price. Yeah. And then, in hindsight, if somebody else makes a fortune out of him selling, he's not bothered because he's made the price he wants. So that's the same when it comes into rents. I mean, I'm quite surprised as well, Richard, when I obviously, I bought 5 recently. But the very fact when I came to you and talked to you about the rent level in certain areas, and you started saying, and I'm thinking, well, that's probably about that rent, and you would go, no, you can get a lot more for that. And I'm like, what? Yeah, really? And so immediately it's like, wow, brilliant. But then the great thing about me is then I look at risk and I look at probability risk, or and then I think to myself, okay, well, if the rent level I got was comfortable and I was okay with that, then I've got a huge margin to fluctuate in terms of my rent level to get the right type of tenant and get the right person in that property, and it's happy. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And your agent is the next one. So if you're using an agent and you're not happy with the results, take a look at how your property is being marketed and managed. And this is a really important one. You should feel in good hands at all times and confident that your interests are being served and protected. Are there areas that could be improved? Can those be achieved with your current agent, or is it time to switch? So I think you really need to have a lot of confidence and a good relationship with your agent. I work with a lot of investors and landlords, and have done for a lot of years, and obviously yourself as well, Jim, and you, Charlotte. And I think if you've not got that, you need to be really transparent and have a lot of trust and confidence in your agent. And if you don't have that, or you don't think your best interests are at the forefront of what they're doing, then there's an issue. I think
there's a lot of apathy out there as well, though, from a lot of landlords. It's like I always liken the letting business just almost like the banks, where people have got a bank account for life and they're just happy to tolerate it, and they're not really bothered if the bank rips them off now and again. It's just that they tolerate it, and I kind of think that's how the apathy is in the lettings industry to a degree. It's like unless there's something seriously. I'm talking about, I'm talking about the cardinal sin. It happens. That's the only time anybody ever leaves their letting agent. And I'm thinking, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that, because you're probably losing an absolute fortune by no shopping around, just like you would do with your insurance, or the price of a car or anything like that. No, I'm not talking about the price. I'm talking about a combination of everything, which makes up the overall benefit package of what your letting agent is actually offering you. I mean, let's be honest, how many letting agents have somebody with a 30-year skill and retired at 38-year-old?
Yeah.
None.
I know.
And that's basically what people buy into us for, because if you buy into us, it's fine. You get access to me as well.
Yeah, and I think I mean, not to give you a big head, but it's good even though.
Right, that'll not be. I've got a double door installed in my house anyway to get out now and again.
But even from my perspective, there's situations where it's good to have somebody with a lot more years experience to turn to and know that you're going to get the right answer. Charlotte, do you have any take on agents relationships?
Yeah, I think communication is key, and like you said, you just got to be transparent. Whenever I phone a landlord with an issue, I'll just be like, look, honestly, it's a mess. This needs to get sorted, or this needs to get sorted.
Yeah,
it's a tenant. Shall we just get it done? And majority of the time, they're like, right, okay, let's go, let's do it, let's see what needs done.
Yeah, and we need to have the confidence in you that you're going to sort this for me. I'll leave it with you.
I'm always out running about the place, making sure that things are getting done right, and checking that contractors are, on target of getting things done. And you don't get that if if you're managing your property yourself.
That's all your own time that's going to get taken up.
Yeah, running about looking for things and making sure things are getting done right. So yeah, definitely communication's key.
Yeah, and it's all those wee things that that we do as agents and things that contribute to the whole service. That, like I say, if you were a self-managing landlord, you're going to have to take all that on yourself. So yeah, and then we move on to ownership. There may be a better investment out there. Maybe your property needs a new kitchen, a new bathroom, but you don't want the expense. Or perhaps a service charges eat far too much into your rent. It's always worth asking the question, is your property becoming too much work, and will your money be better in another buy-to-let?
That's classic.
That is a good one, yeah.
It's about managing your money properly, because there's sometimes I would say to people, why on earth are you buying that property? That makes no sense when you could actually put your money into this, and you could do over 3 properties. You can actually spread your risk, and you could actually, if one goes down, you've still got 2 running all the time. So you're always able to pay if anything goes wrong as a result of that. So it's all about managing what you've got already in a logical way in order to do that. That's me doing my logic thing again. My ducks in a row. That's what I think. You'll see me doing that all the time.
But yeah, no, I think as well, I mean, if people have got existing buy-to-lets, maybe they've run their course, or maybe they're not a good investment anymore, and maybe it's time to move on to a better investment. And I think that's all about knowing what your own goal is, and obviously having the right people to speak to help you achieve that. Sometimes as well, I think an example, people become landlords without intending to be landlords, inheriting properties and things, and maybe they think, right, I'm going to go into buy-to-let and use this as an investment, but it might not be the right property. But so then we'll use that capital, sell that, and then find the right buy-to-let, I think, as well.
God, that's an hour already, Richard.
I know. I was just looking at the time there. So
I talk too much.
I think in summary, every property will have opportunities for improved performance, but not every expense is justified in every home. It's essential to match your spend to your market and avoid over-improving or wasting your money. And like you say, obviously we've got to an hour there, Jim. So final thoughts for yourself, Jim, on this topic?
I think a letting agent is there to provide a service for someone that needs that service. If you can manage them yourself, fine, we'll teach you how to manage them. That's the reality. Just come to me and I'll tell you how to manage the property yourself, and you can do it yourself. But we're there for a purpose. We're there to look after a tenant, and tenants will obviously use a letting agent, more than likely a private landlord sometimes, because they like that level of separation. Charlotte, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same kind of you're saying, if anybody ever needs help looking to manage everything, our numbers are pretty much everywhere. You can email us any questions you have for us. We're always here to answer them, even if you're not a landlord or an investor with us. Definitely, it's always there.
There's more details for the article in here anyway. So if anybody wants a chance to read that, they've got the full blog that we've just gone over here, but in conjunction with the show. And Richard, back to you then.
I think just to wrap that up quickly, I think that everything that we've covered here, a lot of people don't realise that all these things do contribute to increasing your yield on your buy-to-let investments and keeping tenants happy and having longer tenancies. So I'm going to finish it there. It's been really good. We could talk all day, obviously, on this topic, but That's great. Thanks for coming on the show, guys, and I'm going to leave it there.
Thanks very much. You've been a fantastic host, Richard, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye for now, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.